All right, let's cut the crap and have a conversation that people are not willing to have. We got to discuss the obvious. All right, what's up, everybody? Carlton Flowers here with the Go Political channel. And today we're going to discuss the migrant crisis. And like I said in the intro, it's just time to cut the crap and discuss the obvious things that we don't see people talking about. So here we sit in 2024 after 4 years of President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, Carmela, as Boosie calls her. I don't worry about pronouncing her name right because I don't respect her and I don't respect what these people are doing. But as you can see in the picture here, this is the situation that we are dealing with down in Texas and Arizona. The border is not secure. So overall, what is the situation that we have? We have a situation that in the last 4 years, we have had more migrants crossing the border than the population of 41 states. So we have just allowed basically a whole new state worth of people to come into the United States of America. 11 million is what I'm hearing, and even upwards of 20 million. So, of course, the big question remains, why is this going on? Why do we have an open border? Why does the United States, with the biggest military in the world, claim to not have the capability of shutting down the border? Now, one thing I don't understand, and I have yet to get an answer to, is why we have immigration laws in the first place, because they're not respected. What do I mean by that? Well, the federal laws that govern how people come into this country, well, some states don't abide by that. Some cities don't abide by it. While we have people that try to enter into the country by legal means, it can take upwards of 10 years and tens of thousands of dollars with help from attorneys to get naturalized. I've seen people deported after struggling for years on end to do this the legal and proper way. Back when I was in college, I had friends from other countries who had to leave the University of Missouri, Mizzou, my alma mater, because they lost their green card status. I've seen friends marry individuals from other countries and then spend 5-10 years trying to get their spouse naturalized. I had a buddy who married a girl from Romania, and she tried for years and years to get naturalized. 2 times during the time that they were struggling to get her legal status set forth, she had to go back home to Romania. They were apart for months and even more than a year on these 2 occasions while she waited for the attorneys to work on her immigration status. I also had a friend, his name was Manny, who lived right here in Jefferson City. Business owner from Mexico, had a restaurant, 2 restaurants, 2 locations right here, had kids that went to school with my kids. He was an upstanding individual, abided by all of the laws and rules of our town, our state, and the country. But during the time that he was struggling to get his immigration status set and accepted, he got deported after 10 years of trying. Had to close both businesses. So what I don't understand is, why is it that the people who try to abide by the rules get kicked out, while these folks, the 11 million, are allowed to climb the wall, to come through ports of entry, enter the country, overwhelming the border states, while the government sits back and says, oh, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Then we have the gaslighting. We have the current administration that blames everybody but themselves for the crisis that has been created. So while we have the state of Texas getting overwhelmed, the state of Arizona getting overwhelmed, they decided to play by the rules of those who don't believe in the rule of law. They decide to bus these migrants to the cities that we call sanctuary cities. The sanctuary cities state that you can stay here, you can come to our city, despite what federal laws state, and we'll protect you. We won't throw you out. We won't deport you. We don't care what the federal government says. We don't care about the people who get deported because they are trying to do things the legal way. We'll let you stay here. But then it gets better. Not only do they allow them to stay there, they provide resources. So let's build shelters. Let's give them food. Let's give them jobs. And some of those jobs are not even minimum wage jobs, where the corporations that hire them ignore minimum wage. Now, do these workers get rounded up and sent out? No, they don't, because they're in sanctuary cities or sanctuary states. So then some of these sanctuary cities get overwhelmed to the point where they say, that's it, we can't take it. You saw what happened in Denver when they got to the point where they stated, you've exhausted all of our resources. So you guys, you can stay, but you can't stay in our city. You gotta go. They didn't have the money to pay for it. Chicago on the south side, you've seen it, where tons of migrants are given shelter, given food, given the resources that belong to tax-paying citizens, especially in the black communities. But they're told, hey, sorry, we can't invest in your parks, in your schools, in your boys and girls clubs. We don't have the budget. All the while, they pass one bill after another authorizing hundreds of millions of dollars to support the migrants. So while they protest and scream and say, hey, we're sick of giving up our parks, we're sick of giving up our after-school programs, the city says, well, we've got to help these immigrants. In fact, they even asked the federal government for aid, and the federal government was paying a certain amount of money for every illegal immigrant that was being housed and located in Chicago. I think it was about $15,000 per immigrant. And then the federal government said, sorry, we don't have any more money. And the city of Chicago continued to spend money that they did not have. The most recent bill that they passed authorized $90 million to be given to the illegal immigrants. Then we turn around and we watch the current administration blaming everyone else but themselves for this problem. Well, they state, hey, this is just the Republicans trying to embarrass us. They should be ashamed of themselves. Or they blame the previous president and his policies. Well, it's his fault that all these people are flooding into the country. We see New York City that says, come to New York, we'll house you. And they've got, 28 shelters that they've either built or taken old hotels and old buildings to house the illegal immigrants to the point where it was a crisis. So while they said, hey, we're going to take the taxpayers' money to pay for putting these people up, we're going to take it a step further and even give them food. But no, the migrants said, hey, we don't like this food you're giving us. We want food that we're used to from our native countries. So Mayor Eric Adams turned around and said, okay, well, we won't provide you food. We'll just give you debit cards. We'll give you $1,000 a month only to be used at certain grocery stores or food establishments, but there's no restrictions on how they use those debit cards. Meanwhile, crime is ramping up. The city is cluttered. They can't even find enough space to build new facilities. And then they started pushing back against the federal government, saying, hey, we can't handle this. But do they shut down their sanctuary status? No, they don't. So the buses continue to come in. Now, what kind of sense does this make? So here we have the federal government pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't even know what the total is right now. Where does that money come from? It comes out of your pockets as a taxpayer. It also comes from the federal government spending money that they don't have. Yeah, the Federal Reserve can print money to fulfill the budgetary needs of the federal government. And what does that do? It floods new money into the system. And the long-term effect is an increase in prices of everything, with the rate of inflation skyrocketing. The more money you pour into the system that wasn't there before, this non-existent money, well, as the money supply goes up, demand for goods and services, products goes up because there's more money in the hands of people. And what happens? Well, prices are adjusted. They go up. So however you slice it, by either spending our taxpayer money or flooding new money into the system, it's the taxpayers that pay for this. But did we get a say in how much money is spent or poured into the system to support the illegal migrants? No, we don't. But then we're asked to vote for Kamala Harris for president because we don't want that dictator Donald Trump to take over and to put an end to democracy. Meanwhile, where's the democracy in making these decisions to allow these 11 million people to come to this country and for us to foot the bill? Where is the democracy? And what is the government doing to put an end to the situation? Now, when you look at other countries, they have common sense. If you look at the country of Egypt, they have a wall that I believe it's somewhere on the order of 200 miles long. They spent quite a bit of money. I think it was $4 billion on that wall to keep people from flooding into the country. Why? Because they don't want nefarious individuals. They don't want terrorists to flood into their country, and they don't want to have to provide resources for all of the people coming into their country against their wishes. But here in the United States, oh, well, no, we can't afford a wall. Now, we've got military bases all over the world, but we can't afford to stop people from coming into the country illegally. Now, why are the laws there? Well, it's for a reason. It's for a reason. It's so we can have law and order and opportunity and freedom for the people who live here and pay taxes. Now, can we host everyone in the world and pay for it to come and live here? No, we can't. No, we cannot do that because it comes on the backs of those who live here, that work hard every day, who have to withstand the pressure and the harassment from the IRS stating you got to pay your federal taxes every year or else we'll take everything away from you and possibly jail you. So while we face the consequences of having our possessions taken from us, to be fired from our jobs, to have our houses taken away from us, and to possibly even be put into jail for tax evasion, we've got 11 million people that come in who don't have to abide by the law, who don't have to pay federal taxes, who are not given any pressure, but they're given free resources. So this doesn't make a bit of sense to me. But again, we're asked to vote for Kamala Harris to continue this situation that we're in right now. Now, what are her plans? The former border czar was supposed to solve this situation. But day after day, we hear one excuse after another. The most recent was, well, Kamala Harris was never the border czar. That was made up by Republicans. She went down to South America to get to the root of the problem. She visited the border a couple times, but never gave one answer to the question of how do we stop people from coming here in the first place? Now, besides that, we know for a fact that assistance has been given to people in countries south of the border. They were caught handing out leaflets, setting up stations where they would give advice, help, consultation to those who were seeking to come across the border, telling them where to go, the best ports of entry, the places where they can cross and claim political asylum. But we don't provide any support to the state of Texas or the state of Arizona, who have to come up with the resources to handle the problems that go along with an open border. So my question is, for those of you who are in support of Kamala Harris, how am I supposed to be guaranteed that if I vote for Kamala Harris, that I won't have to suffer the consequences of increased inflation and continuing to have to pay for these millions and millions of migrants that flood into the country? And what about the people who live here that are in need? What about the communities where poverty is a problem? What about the communities where there are no jobs? What about the communities with crumbling schools? What are we going to do about that? And where do they stand in line to receive all of this aid and money that the government prints out of nowhere into thin air? I'd love to hear an answer from that, from the people who are in support of this current administration. Now, I've always said the Democrats of today are not the Democrats of your parents. It used to be that we had rule of law. It used to be we created these rules about immigration to protect the people that live here. That's no longer the case. So I have yet to have an answer as to why we see this going on. I have yet to hear a logical explanation from this one as to why this one is such a bad person for stating that we need to secure the border. Now, this guy right here is supposed to be the tyrant, the dictator. And this one is supposed to be freeing everyone from the tyrant dictator from getting into office again by any means necessary. But now, during the 4 years that this guy was the president of the United States, were we in a dictatorship? Were my rights violated? Was I unable to operate my businesses without the federal government intervening or taking away my resources? Was I not allowed to vote in a primary? Answer that. But this one is supposed to have all of the answers. But those answers are not given. There's no specifics. There's no plan. There's no logic and reasoning given to me as to why I would want to vote for her to continue what has been going on for the last 4 years. So if it's such a crisis and we need this one in office to solve that, what have you been doing the last 4 years? What have you been doing while you were wearing the hat of border czar or whatever you want to call it? So you weren't the border czar, but you were put in charge of solving the problem by the President of the United States. What are the results of it? 11 million people in this country who are given free resources while we pay the price through ridiculous, out of control inflation. So I would like to know from you, if you are a Democrat who is in support of this one, what is the reasoning? Why should I believe that you're going to solve this problem while we sat and watched it only get worse for the last 4 years. What are you going to do different that you couldn't have already done before? And who do you blame? How do you blame the other side when the Democrats have control of the Senate and we sat under the leadership of the Democrat president? Put your answers below. Let's discuss it. Maybe you can sway me. I'm not saying I would never consider voting for this one. I would have to have answers. I would have to have some guarantees. Make me feel secure about that decision. Make me feel secure about the fact that you've got some new plan that's going to solve this problem that you did not solve for the last 4 years. I'm open to discussion. I'm not stating that I absolutely support this one no matter what, because he's got problems too. But it doesn't seem to me that my life was adversely affected during this guy's tenure to the point where I would think, stop him by all means necessary. We can't have that evil dictator coming back. We need to protect democracy. So post your comments below and convince me. I don't want to argue. I want you to convince me that this individual is going to do better if she's elected. Let me know what the reasoning is. Make me feel secure. I'm waiting. Post your comments below and let me know. And until then, this is Carlton, and I am out.